Hey everyone, welcome back. Let's jump right into today's explainer because this one is absolutely fascinating. You know, when you look out into your garden or take a walk through the woods, you probably just see a really peaceful, quiet, green world. But what if I told you that right beneath your feet, there's this brilliant, totally invisible psychological war going on? To really wrap our heads around this, we first need to talk about the primary targets of this warfare, which are ants. I want you to completely scratch the idea of an ant colony as just a cluster of annoying bugs living in your neighborhood. Instead, you need to imagine them as what they truly are to a tiny organism. They are a hyper-coordinated, completely unyielding war machine.
I mean, ants are the ultimate collective superpower. Think about it. They're heavily armed with these crushing mandibles and literal acid. They are intensely territorial, and they boast numbers in the millions. They're basically the apex infantry of the insect world. Now, I want you to contrast that incredibly aggressive, highly mobile strike force with a plant. Plants are literally rooted in the ground. They are completely stationary. They have zero muscles, no nervous system, and to us, they seem totally vulnerable to the weather and whatever herbivores happen to be wandering by.
So that brings us to the big, central question of today's explainer. How exactly do silent, rooted plants manage to control aggressive insect armies? It sounds like an impossible matchup, right? Well, the truth is, plants don't use brute force to survive. They use profound psychological warfare. Through some unbelievably sophisticated chemistry, they brew these mind-altering chemical bribes to essentially trick these fierce ant colonies into acting as their own personal, heavily armored transport services and security details.
Part 1. Elaiosomes and Chemical Bribery.
Okay, so to understand how plants pull off this massive botanical heist, we have to look really closely at the exact biological weapon they're deploying. The entire foundation of this strategy relies on something called Myrmecochory. That's just the scientific term for the evolutionary strategy where plants specifically use ants to disperse their seeds. And it is a beautifully elegant solution to a massive problem. See, a plant desperately needs its seeds to travel far away, so the new baby sprouts don't end up competing with the parent plant for sunlight and water. But how in the world do you get an aggressive, meat-eating insect to gently carry your delicate seed across the forest floor? Well, the plant pulls it off using a tiny, fleshy structure attached right to its hard seed casing.
The secret weapon here is called an Elaiosom. It's this highly concentrated, lipid-rich nutrient package. It is absolutely packed with proteins and essential fatty acids like oleic acid. But here is the crazy part. This structure serves absolutely zero internal biological purpose for the plant itself. None. The plant isn't using these nutrients to grow or survive. It manufactures this little fleshy cap strictly as bait. It is 100% designed to hack an ant's sensory system.
The sheer brilliance of this Elaiosome really comes down to the chemistry. The plant isn't just offering up a healthy little snack, it is actively mimicking the exact chemical signature of dead insects, which just happen to be the primary, most valuable food source for growing ant larvae. Just think about that for a second. To a foraging ant walking by, this tiny seed doesn't look like a boring piece of wood or plant debris. It smells exactly like a massive jackpot of high-energy meat. And that scent instantly triggers this completely irresistible retrieving reflex in the ant's brain.
Moving on to Part 2, the Subterranean Vault.
So, the plant has successfully hacked the ant's programming. What actually happens next? Well, the extraction process is incredibly clean and calculated. It goes like this. Step 1. The foraging ant detects that irresistible chemical signal, grabs the fleshy Elaiosom, and completely ignores the hard seed attached to it. Step 2. The ant effortlessly carries a payload 4 times its own weight deep down into the safety of the subterranean nest. Step 3. Down in the nursery chambers, the colony carefully chews off that tasty white Elaiosome to feed their growing larvae. And finally, Step 4, because the actual seed casing is way too hard for the ants to break, they just treat it as trash. They toss the perfectly intact, unharmed seed straight into their internal garbage chambers.
But getting thrown in the trash is exactly what the plant planned all along. An ant colony's garbage dump is actually a premium underground greenhouse. It's incredibly fertile and packed with nutrient-rich waste. And even better, by being dragged deep underground, the seed is now completely safe from seed-eating birds on the surface, and it's shielded from devastating forest fires. The ant has unknowingly acted as this heavily armored transport service and basically planted the seed in the most perfect environment imaginable.
Now, if you're sitting there thinking this is just some rare parlor trick performed by a few unique flowers, consider the sheer scale of this. Over 11,000 plant species globally rely on this exact, brilliantly calculated ant dispersal mechanic. It is a massive, globally recognized ecological phenomenon. The plant kingdom hasn't just tricked a few bugs, they've systematically weaponized the instincts of the insect world on an enormous scale.
All right, part 3, the symbiotic bodyguards.
As wild as that seed delivery system is, it's really just the beginning. Some plants take this whole mind control thing to an absolute extreme through something called obligate mutualism. This is your textbook symbiotic relationship where two species literally depend on each other for survival. If one dies, the other dies. A prime example of this extreme biological alliance is between the Acacia-Ant tree and Pseudomyrmex ants. See, the acacia tree doesn't just want a seed moved, it wants round-the-clock, ruthless protection for its own living body.
Think of it as the most high-stakes real estate contract in nature. The acacia tree plays the wealthy landlord. It literally grows these massive, hollowed-out thorns specifically to serve as luxury barracks for the ants. On top of that, it sprouts special glands that leak pure sugar nectar, and it even produces these little nutrient packets called Beltian bodies exclusively to feed the colony. In exchange for this free housing and a lifetime supply of food, the ants pay their rent in blood. They provide ruthless mercenary defense and lifelong protection. The ants are basically a paid, private mafia for the tree.
And let me tell you, the tactical breakdown of this outsourced military defense is absolutely brutal. The exact moment a threat touches the acacia tree, whether it's a hungry deer, a grasshopper, or even just a foreign vine, the ants go to work. They swarm out of their thorn barracks by the thousands. They violently bite the intruding animal, and they spray this blinding formic acid to drive it away. Amazingly, they even act as landscapers. They actively clear and destroy any competing weeds around the tree's base just to make sure their host gets all the sunlight. The tree has completely and successfully outsourced its military defense to a standing insect army. It's unreal.
Which brings us to part 4, the global botanical network.
It really makes you look at the houseplants sitting on your windowsill a little differently, doesn't it? The absolute crucial takeaway from all this is that plants are turning their potential enemies into their most loyal allies. The silent green world out there does not just sit around passively adapting to the animal kingdom. No, through an absolute masterclass in chemical bribery, plants are the true puppet masters. They are pulling the strings of the insect world to ensure their own survival, their protection, and their propagation.
But as incredibly mind-blowing as this obligate mutualism and chemical mimicry is, relying on insects is honestly just one single facet of a plant's social intelligence. When we step outside the ant colony and start looking at the broader global botanical network, things get even more mysterious. Which leaves us with a truly fascinating, mind-bending thought to chew on. If plants possess the chemical intelligence to literally brainwash entire insect armies, what kind of complex secrets and resources are they sharing with each other through the hidden, underground intelligence of mother trees? Well, that is exactly what we're going to be diving into next time. Thank you so much for joining me for today's explainer. Keep wondering, and I will see you then.